Hi, everyone, and welcome to NJQBA's podcast. I'm Carolyn Meng from Livingston High School, and here we have, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hello, guys. I'm Nick Zhang. I go to Bergen Tech Teterboro, and I'm a junior.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua Yi. I go to East Brunswick High School. I'm also a junior.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aum Mundhe. I go to Ridgewood High School, and I'm a junior as well.
Okay, cool. And since this year was unfortunately cut short by the COVID-19 epidemic, we thought we would do a year in review, seeing as that we don't have any nationals to plan for, sadly, and get started on reviewing what's going to happen next year. So, Nick, do you want to start us off?
All right. So the story of this year has been fairly straightforward. It's kind of just show up to a tournament, and then Hunter or Melbourne wins. Sometimes East Brunswick wins too. But yeah, I'd say it's been fairly top-heavy in general. I think in terms of New Jersey, I think Melbourne is pretty clearly kind of like unbeatable, basically.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of new teams start to work their way onto a circuit, especially Ridgewood. So, you want to tell us about your team this year?
Yeah, sure. So in the past, we usually played a lot of History Bowl tournaments and not a lot of Quiz Bowl. But then last June, around that time, we went to Iliac, which was a college-level tournament at Bard, and we absolutely loved it. So because of our experience there, we started buying NAQT packets and practicing that format. And eventually, when it got to September, we were much better than we were then. Obviously, it's been hard for us to adjust from history only to other subjects like literature and science and fine arts, but I think we've done a pretty good job learning how to play Quiz Bowl, and we've gotten some big wins.
I've heard of another school in New Jersey that was kind of underrated last year, but this year are actually really good. Josh, why don't you talk about them?
Wow, thanks, Nick. So East Brunswick is kind of crooked in that our school only does 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. So we only have our entire Quiz Bowl team only has a few years to study. So we haven't been able to field very good teams for a while. So this year, everyone on East Brunswick started studying really hard, and we started using like software like QuizDB and Anki, and because of this, we were able to improve really quickly. And towards the end of the year, we were able to do well at a few tournaments that Melbourne and Hunter weren't at.
So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of this year, as we said. So, obviously, if we had nationals this year, Melbourne and Hunter were both top contenders to win Nats.
They were literally ranked first and second.
Yeah, they're ranked first and second in the country by Groger Ranks. Check out our friends at Groger Ranks. They're pretty cool. So, yeah, I mean, but Melbourne's going to take a hit next year, so this was their chance.
Rip.
Unfortunate.
All right, so looking forward to next year. So, Nick, you want to start off with your rankings?
All right, sure. Well, it's kind of hard to do like a solid rankings on who actually is first, second, or third because, September is about 5 months away. But right now, I feel like the top two contenders for New Jersey the top three contenders for New Jersey are in some order, just East Brunswick, High Tech, and Livingston.
Yeah, probably something like that. Like you see East Brunswick having Josh and Lillian Ju. They're both very strong players who have started to study, really come into their own, studying, and they have a really good balance with Josh covering history and science and Lillian covering literature. And then you have High Tech, who's always been a perennial powerhouse in our region, and they keep Deepak, who is a very strong generalist, and they add a lot of new players from their depth. And then you have us, Livingston. So does somebody else want to comment on Livingston? I may be slightly biased on us.
I can do it. Okay, so Livingston is a great team, obviously. They have Carolyn, who is a great generalist, covers science very well, and history also very well. Then they have this killer specialist in literature, Rosa Zhang, who, she's one of the best poetry players and can scale very well from regs to regs plus even nationals level. And it's not just those two in their team. They also have options in their depth, like Rina Nambi, who is good at visual fine arts like paintings, but also knows a lot about religion and mythology. In general, their whole team is very good at mythology. And they have Jason. Jason is a good player to have on any NAQT sets because he covers trash. He knows his sports well. He knows his current event politics, and in general, he helps Carolyn with covering history with his expertise in U.S. history. And there's also more options than just those four because they have Jeffrey, who covers science very well and is also quite good at piano, so that would transfer into his AFA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just like to
yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, yeah, I just like to mention that like this year Livingston has been made playoffs and has basically been in the top bracket of every tournament they've been to, and they graduate literally no one.
We don't graduate anyone, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, outside of those. Sorry.
In terms of like the next tier of teams, I think the consensus seems to be that Ridgewood can be really good if they can like if they can cover science and literature pretty well. Because they lose Philip Turman, who is probably their top scorer and best player this year. Then you have Teterboro. They lose Rohit, but you guys, well, Nick, obviously you're still around to destroy us all.
Yeah.
Then there's Milburn, who graduates both Dean and Ethan, I think. So they'll be taking a pretty big hit this year, for next year. But they keep Ben, who's the best side player in the region, so they'll be all right.
Yeah, but definitely some teams that haven't been as strong in the past are definitely going to move up this year compared to previous years when it was kind of just dominated by high tech. Yeah. But those aren't the only teams in New Jersey. There's a lot of other ones like I guess Tenafly. So Nick, you probably know Tenafly better than most of us. So do you want to talk about them?
Well, this year Tenafly's entire A team does graduate. However, their middle school team is also like super active too. So of course, like whoever does graduate into their high school and doesn't get stolen by us or BCA is obviously going to be very scary. I can pull up stats from middle school tournaments real quick. Hold on.
I know Tenafly has Arush, who's a fantastic player. He has fantastic NAQT stats in any of the Madden competitions. He's always placed well. He's definitely a big threat next year if he continues to play in high school.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big hit because they're losing Andrew, Juno, and Alex.
Although to be fair, a lot of teams in New Jersey are losing their entire A teams. For example, Milburn, High Tech, and us, we all lost like a lot of people.
But you guys always have depth. Josh, you guys send like E teams to tournaments.
Okay, that's only for like novice tournaments. Those don't count.
Right. We sent an E team to March Madness last year.
Just looking at the stats from the middle school state championships this year, Tenafly got second place and basically dumpstered everyone else except for Hunter A. So I'm pretty sure they keep Arush graduates to Tenafly High School, and he has like really impressive stats too. So obviously in the next few years, if he like still decides to continue grinding for quizbowl and stuff, Tenafly is still like going to recover from their 18 graduating.
Do any of you guys have an opinion on MCA or JP Stevens? Because those two I've only seen play on A sets before, and I'm not sure how well they do next year.
MCA hasn't been as great as they have been in the past. They graduated Jatin 2 years ago, and now they're graduating Sean Wang. But I'm not sure because they don't really seem to have anyone coming up. I'm not sure what grade Rocco's in, but he's an okay player if they retain him.
Looking at MCA stats, it looks like their top scorer, Alan Wang, is in 11th grade. So,
what?
Yeah.
Alan Wang plays for JP Stevens.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, JP Stevens, they performed pretty well at East Brunswick Fun Fest, I believe. Though they did qualify for Nats through forfeit, but they had pretty good stats. But I think they lose a bunch of players this year as well, so I'm not sure how well they're going to perform next year.
I mean, looking from the stats though from FunFest, their top scorer, Alan Wang, is in 11th grade, so he's still going to be around next year. So obviously, if he decides to keep studying, he can be really good.
Yeah, they're a relatively new team, so it's fun to see them be so good and join the quizbowl community, I guess.
Yeah,
they haven't really seen them around, so.
What's your take on Homedale next year? So I remember that Alan Wu was pretty good at NHBB this year. If he continues to study, I guess that he'll be good. If anyone has more insight on that.
Well, I just
Probably.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay, Alan, we're actually in Homedale. Remind me of actually a lot of my own team in that we both Homedale and Ridgewood have a
You're cutting
ton of
out a little bit.
like as of I'm cut. Oh, shoot. Okay, so am I cutting out now?
You're
Yeah,
fine
just
now.
just start from the beginning.
Okay, sure. So Alan Wu and Homedale remind me a lot of my own team, Ridgewood, in that we both have a lot of experience in NHBB and History Bowl, and so
You're cutting out
Alan
again.
particularly covered history and geography. Okay,
You're
last
like
time and then
completely
someone else.
cutting it.
This is crooked. I'd like to just what am I gonna say? Oh yeah, I'd like to mention that like the NHBB circuit in New Jersey is pretty huge considering the fact that Dave Madden, who runs NHBB, is from New Jersey. So like I just think in general there's a lot of potential for outreach towards NHBB teams that only do NHBB for them to get into the quizbowl community, and then obviously that can help a great deal in making the region more competitive and like interesting competitively, I guess.
Yeah, the region's already quite competitive because Hunter regularly comes down to New Jersey's tournaments and stomps the field.
I guess going back to Homedale, Homedale's because Aum was cutting out a bit, but Homedale, it's probably going to be the same thing as the last couple of years. Alan's going to be our leading scorer, and if he can get his negs under control and branch out into some other subjects, then they could be pretty strong this year, but I'm not sure how much support he has, and he's commented on how he hasn't had much support recently, so we'll see how well they play.
Well, it's all up to him.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some other teams in the region in New Jersey as well. You have some new teams like Biotech, Mountain Lakes, Pingree, Marlboro, Riverdale, and Edison.
Also BCA.
And BCA.
BCA, and you also have Heightstown High School.
Yeah,
they're
Heightstown did
all
well.
Yeah, they're all very
Levy
new
Novice.
teams, but they all have a lot of potential if they can study and kind of get into their groove. So New Jersey looks pretty exciting next year in terms of new teams and competition. So
I know in particular, like Riverdale has a middle school team that's like plays a lot. So if and BCA kind of gets feeders from all around Bergen County too. So like they always like gets a lot of people who are really good at quiz bowl going to their schools. It's just a matter of whether or not there's an effort to get them to continue doing quiz bowl in high school.
Yeah, BCA keeps Maya Waltzer as well, and she's becoming a very good player. If you look at her stats from Morristown Beard and other tournaments she's been to this year.
Yeah, and she's only a freshman.
Yeah, she could get good given a couple more years. Any other comments on the other New Jersey teams, or?
Not really. I think we hit all of them, sort of.
I think we hit all the big ones.
Mm-hmm. Will Morristown Beard be at any tournaments next year?
Probably. I think Timothy is still a junior.
Oh, all right.
He is.
So he should keep their team pretty active.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun to see around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And definitely New Jersey's trying to, at NJQBA, we're doing the Garden Cup and trying to conduct some outreach to try to get some more teams onto the circuit. And we'd love to see some of the novice teams come out and kind of stay with the game for the next few years.
All right, so do you want to expand to the entire overall area, so like the Northeast in general?
Yeah. So
Yeah, sure.
we don't just compete with other New Jersey teams. We got
Right.
the whole tri-state area.
As mentioned before, Hunter comes down and regularly stomps us, so for next year they'll likely be the top team in the region. So they have really good history players, Pedro and Cerulean, who also cover geo and current events. And then
You have Ben Chapman, who does science. You have Rachel Yang and Andrew Zhang, who also both do lit.
yeah, all of the people in Hunter A or Hunter B as well, they all have a lot of generalist capabilities, and they also they only graduate one senior this year, I believe, from their A team.
They lose just Asher.
Right, and then they gain a whole new MS team, so they'll be extremely dominant next year.
As
Even
usual.
even the
think
B and C
yeah.
teams.
Yeah, they're like the consensus number one team
The whole
in the
country.
poll. Yeah, for probably the whole country. Then you have a bunch of teams from Connecticut who come down to play. You have Hotchkiss, Darien, and Choate. Choate's a fairly new team, but we saw them perform very well this year at various tournaments they went to. When they went up to HFT in Boston, they did really well on the Regs Plus. I think their top team finished in the second bracket, actually. So they could, and they don't lose that many players. They keep a lot of their team. So if they're willing to study and kind of put that effort in, they are a real dark horse in our region next year.
In addition, so as mentioned from Connecticut, besides Choate, there's also Choate. There's also Hotchkiss and Darien. So Hotchkiss, they're led by Cooper, who's a really, really scary history specialist. So they graduate almost no one. They only graduate one person, just like Hunter. And so they'll also be very scary next year if they can expand into science or literature. So they're in a similar position to Ridgewood, I guess. And as
Yeah, go ahead.
So
yeah.
Darien too, even though they graduate John Phipps, who's like their best player, they still, if anyone around in the middle school circuit knows, Middlesex Middle School, which feeds into Darien High School, is like a ginormous team, and they're also really, really good. So like, of course, they always get fed really good players during from their middle school. So like a lot of other teams, I guess, like if there's an effort to get their middle school players engaged through high school quizbowl too, then like of course they'll be really good and they can recover pretty easily.
Yeah, and I believe that Darien keeps Alex Delvecchio, who is their second scorer this year. He's probably been pretty heavily shadowed the last 2 or 3 years, but he is a fairly good player in his own right. Then I think you have Wilton from Connecticut. I don't know them that well, so if somebody wants to
I can do
talk
that.
about them a little more.
All right. So Wilton's in a very interesting situation of having two teams from the same school that essentially function separately. I can talk about both. So first, there's Lucas Kutsukos. Right. He's a fantastic history and geography player. He's done like National Geographic B. He's placed well in all of David Madden's middle school events when he was in the 8th grade just last year. And he's done a lot of soloing this year and getting. So he hasn't exactly done the best this year in a lot of the categories, mainly because he specialized in history and geography. But he's done an outstanding job in studying and learning a bit of literature and a bit of fine arts. So through his studying, even though they might not be a team that's good enough this year that can replicate their success, Wilton with Lucas can be a very threatening team in the future in like 2-ish years. And then the other Wilton team, led by Anjo Theratil, is in a pretty similar situation to Lucas in that they both Anjo and Lucas are among the top scorers at the tournaments they go to, but they don't cover as much as the distribution as you would expect from a top team. So as a result, their like team-wide performances suffer a bit. But as I said with Lucas, Anjo has the potential to be a top player if he can reach a bit and science and literature and other categories to the level of his history. I think both Wilton teams can be fantastic, and they've already proven to be fantastic, and they could beat a lot of teams that come into their path.
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple other teams that have been around that from Long Island, upstate New York. You have Ithaca, who comes down this year, or who comes down here a lot. Though they lose Raymond this year, but they seem to have a strong feeder program, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of kids who come into their school to play quiz bowl. Like, it's a very popular thing there. At tournaments, they've consistently fielded like A teams and B teams, especially in their circuit in Pennsylvania. And Ithaca has consistently proven to be one of the top teams in the whole country, even if they don't play teams from New Jersey as much. So when they do come down, like, they're definitely a team to watch out for.
Yeah, I think in general, a lot of teams in like the Pennsylvania region and upstate New York kind of get overlooked when compared them nationally, because since most the quizbowl community is most active around like big population centers like the New York tri-state area. So I remember last year before nationals, there was basically no one was talking about teams like Hempfield or Friends Select, and then at HSNCT they both ended up getting top 20. So yeah, it's hard for us to make a judgment on them because we just don't play against them that much. But they're still really good, and I think they'll probably just surprise people again by like how good they are at nationals next year.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing because our area is so big and has so many teams. You have teams from the Northeast, or from New England coming down sometimes. You have teams from Pennsylvania, teams from Delaware, and it's kind of impossible to keep track of them all. But there's some very strong teams. You have Karsten Reinerson leading Phillips up in Boston. I don't think they've come down for any tournaments recently, but they're a very strong team. You've had Acton Boxborough that's come down this past year with Basel, and he's a very strong player, though he does graduate. I'm not sure how strong his brother is, but he seems like a decent player in his own right. That's Chris. And you have from Delaware, you have Wilmington Charter coming up. And Charter, as usual, they have very strong teams. If somebody wants to comment on them.
No, yeah, having played Charter at a recent tournament, I can confirm that even though last year they did graduate two very talented players in Soham and Whaley, their team this year is still very good. They cover the fine arts actually very well, and in general, they're very well-rounded. They can get good buzzes in any category, so they're very dangerous, though I don't really know about who graduates and who doesn't, but given how consistently strong Wilmington Charter has been, I still expect them to be very good and a fierce opponent whenever we play them in the future.
Yeah, I think they might graduate Jonathan, who's one of their best players. I'm not 100% sure on that one, though. He's like their top scorer, and a bunch of A sets. He played a bunch of A sets, put up fairly high power percentages and PPG. Looking at their stats from FunFest though, they had Adi, Jonathan, Rishith, and Amon, and only Adi stays, but he was their lowest scorer that day, so I'm not sure how well they'll be doing next year. I mean, right. Are there any other teams you guys want to talk about, or?
Maybe Belmont will be good next year. I think they beat Karsten at one tournament this year. So they're also from like New England.
Yeah, so they're not really in our region, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we should probably go back on topic on New Jersey teams.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of New Jersey, like we said before, we're trying to do some outreach, get some teams kind of into Quiz Bowl, host some more novice tournaments. We're actually writing a Northeast novice set that can be used. So having the additional novice set should be pretty helpful, though we're not sure how the whole pandemic situation is going to play out, so hopefully that doesn't really get in the way of
hopefully
Quiz
it
Bowl.
gets resolved by September.
Yeah, hopefully that doesn't get in the way of Quiz Bowl and our outreach. Though we definitely have a lot of great resources. We have the team at Rutgers who conducted the Scarlet Light Novice Tournament last year, and an ASET every September.
Yep. We also have our friends at Hunter who host a mirror of the Scalp Novice set for teams all across the tri-state area too. That's fun.
Yeah, and at Livingston, we're probably gonna bring back our New Year's Novice Tournament for the second year. So that's another opportunity to see a bunch of new teams, get them into the game.
Yep.
Another tournament where novice teams can potentially go to is probably the Morristown Beer Tournament.
Yeah, if they run it again this year. They did some great outreach last year.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, like, anyone can get good at Quiz Bowl in a year. Like, just talk to Aum, right? Because, like, his team didn't exist until 11 months ago. But since then, Ridgewood has, like, won a lot of, well...
Yeah, but Ridgewood is a relatively new team this year, and you saw Princeton's high school tournament this year, which was their first NAQT tournament. They performed very well. You saw Aum was the third scorer, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, Aum was the third scorer, and this year Philip even outscored him, but that's just a very strong team as a whole.
as long as you have the motivation and the work ethic to want to improve and get good at quizbowl, then it's really easy for you to shoot way up in the rankings.
Yeah, all of these rankings are just like guesses at this point. There's still a long time before the season actually starts, so we could be wrong on a lot of these.
Yeah,
We
we'll
hope
probably.
we're wrong.
Yeah,
I mean,
but we'll try to get back to this once the season kind of gets into swing and see how right or wrong we were.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see all the different teams play out. Obviously, a lot of studying can still be done between April and September. That's like, what, 6 months? And so in all that time, a team that's been pretty average could become one of the top teams in the region. And even a new team could develop and really produce some upset wins in that time. So I'm very excited to see how teams use all this time to, just keep getting better at Quiz Bowl and keep making the region more competitive.
Yeah, it keeps things interesting from just having Melbourne and Hunter every single tournament. So be the change you want to see.
Study hard.
Yeah, and a bunch of us are seniors, so once college apps are over, like, we're probably going to go on a study grind and see how that goes. Like, I think most of the top players in our region are going to be seniors next year.
Yep. So if you're a sophomore, then that's good news for you because
You get
we can't
rid
lose
of
to
us
you.
very soon.
Yeah, we're gonna become old and we're gonna be out. So the whole state is wide for the taking.
Yeah. Is there anything else, or?
Play tape here online.
Oh yeah, actually that's true. As part of the improvement, there's a lot of online tournaments that are being held by people with the Long Island Quiz Bowl Association, like the Joe Feldman, and so his tournaments have been good in terms of getting people out and using this time to play Quiz Bowl. Because Corona can't stop Quiz Bowl. Nothing stops Quiz Bowl. And
If you want to read an article on an introduction to online quiz bowl, there's one up on NJQBA. So check that out if you're interested.
And then Nick, as he was saying earlier, is running a Tape Here online tournament, which is going to be a fundraiser to help the struggle against coronavirus. I would strongly recommend anyone play that, especially because it's been written by a New Jersey person. So it's good to support his set as well as the greater good.
Well, it's kind of hard for new players. I recommend don't play Butterscotch instead because that's more geared towards novice players.
Ah, you're right.
There's also a Scop Online mirror, I think, that's being run sometime in April.
I think it's this weekend.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah, it is?
Is it this weekend?
I think they're trying to expand the field, actually.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for that, Just don't be scared to just sign up and just do it. It's pretty low risk. No one really cares that much about how you really perform. It's just like a learning experience,
Right. It's a chance to practice, I guess. All of us are going to be out of practice next year with the amount of tourneys that we've gone to towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and for all the new teams, if you're listening to this, we hope to see you around the circuit next year. We hope that you guys will join us at our tournaments. And for all the teams that have been around for a while, we look forward to seeing you again.
Yep. Stay safe, stay healthy, have fun practicing.
And that's our first podcast. Thank you for listening, guys.